pretty soon Bill said, well, I'd like to hire you full time if that's okay. So then I gave notice to Woody, and he takes me aside. We were in a cafeteria somewhere, some school, and he takes me aside and he says, you know, Mark, I heard you want to go play with Bill Evans. I said, but you know, it's just a trio.
I had a wonderful time chatting with today's guest. He definitely needs no introduction. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we are talking today with Marc Johnson, who I've been wanting to have on the podcast for years. He released his first solo double bass album, Overpass, recently. So we talk about this album, the process behind putting it together, his path through the music world. He's from Nebraska. I'm from South Dakota. And then Marc went on to Texas, University of North Texas. And then, of course, Woody Herman, Bill Evans, you name it. The list goes on and on. That and much more. Quick shout out to our sponsors, Upton Bass, Carnegie Mellon University Double Bass Studio, and Ear Trumpet Labs. More on them later. But let's dig into this conversation with Marc Johnson.
Jason.
Hey, Marc, how are you doing?
Doing good, thanks.
All right. Thanks for taking some time to chat. I've been a fan for years, so it's great to connect with you.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah,
it's my pleasure.
Where are you located, Marc? I sort of assume that all jazz bassists live in the New York area. Am I right?
Yeah, I lived in Manhattan for 40 years. We recently moved to Garden City, which is about 25 miles east on Long Island.
Okay.
It's the city, but we're in suburbia now.
That could be a nice change. I'm sure.
Yeah, after all these years, I don't use the city like I used to, and or I don't participate, I should say, in the city, what the city has to offer as much as I used to. So it's just nice to have a little quiet when you're home from the road.
It's like the older I get, the more dense a place I live. I live in San Francisco, in North Beach, and so it's but you're from Nebraska originally, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
A long time ago.
Okay. I'm from South Dakota, so I would go in from South Dakota, and then every place seems to be a little bit denser.
Yeah.
And I love the new album, by the way. I'm thanks to your publicist for the idea, but it's great, and I love the solo bass album and your first solo bass album, correct?
And probably my only. I won't say for sure, but you know, it was great. I loved doing it. It was something I always kind of wanted to do. I've been experimenting with different ideas and in the practice room and occasionally in live performance. I'll be featured in for a moment or two in one of Eliane's sets, you know. But Eliane Elias, by the way, is my wife and partner for many years, and we work together almost exclusively now. And so when I'm on tour with her, there's to be a moment where she'll feature me, and I'll usually pick that tuned artist to play, which is actually the second track on the album. Yeah.
Well, it is interesting. I couldn't help but think this is maybe 2019 or something like that. Larry Grenadier with the Gleaners, he was coming through San Francisco and doing a tour. And so I saw a show, and it was really interesting to see a solo bass show. It was at SF Jazz. And I was thinking, here I am in one of the main concert venues in the city, and I'm watching essentially a solo double bass recital. And then after the concert, I said, Larry, have you done this sort of thing before? He just kind of laughed. And he said, no, never, like touring with a solo bass record. Have you, or are you planning? I know we're in the hopefully the tail end of this crazy pandemic, but are you thinking about doing some live dates with this, or have you done some live dates with this yet?
I have not, and I probably won't. But if there's interest in somebody, says, "Hey, I really want you here. I want you to do this," and all the stars align, then okay, then we'll do it. But probably not. But I enjoy being featured inside of Eliane's set, and usually it's in a good moment, and we pace things out, and it works, and I think it's enough to say, hey, this is something you can do on a double bass, and I'm getting out on the instrument, and if you want to hear more, here's a whole album. It's like you use the tour to kind of support in a small way your products, and vice versa. It's often the CD is also an opportunity to talk about your touring,
right?
Where you're going to be appearing, in whose town, and that kind of thing. And then the local radio gets on that. It's a cooperative venture these days. It always has been, but even more so now, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure. And you recorded it a few years ago, right? 2018. Did I read that right? Was that when the session?
Yeah, we had a window of opportunity. We were in Brazil at the time. We holiday down there regularly. Well, we used to before the pandemic. We were in Brazil once or twice a year. My wife's Brazilian, and her family's all there. So it just made sense, to be there. And we had 2 or 3 months we were there. And so we booked some time in the studio that we know. We've worked in before with an engineer that we know and have worked with. And, everything just kind of worked out. And I liked what was recorded enough to send it off to Manfred Eicher. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah. I always love when I get a chance to chat with someone who's been around the block and a prominent player like you. I love looking up and checking out interviews. I'm so glad that you chatted maybe like a year and a half ago with is it Pablo Hyde? Am I pronouncing his name right?
Oh yes, he's a pianist in Germany.
Yeah, and I think his show is called Pablo Hyde Investigates, which is a perfect name because he's just this very curious guy, and I've had him pop up on my radar a few times. So I was just watching what you were chatting with him, and it's just such a fun way for me to learn more about folks and listen to topics. And one thing that came up, and I was wondering about this because I remember reading in your bio, you played in the Fort Worth Symphony, right, when you were at UNT. So you really have a strong classical background, right? That was kind of your gateway into the music world. Was classical bass?
My parents always saw to it that I had private instruction, and the approach and fundamentals for any instrument really is a kind of tried and true classical method. You just, especially for string players, I think there's you want to have the fundamentals together in order to execute things as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Intonation is one of them. The bow really helps to focus the intonation, and you just get a broad sense for music, and playing in an ensemble, and all the various things that happen in a classical structure are great for developing on an instrument.
Did you start on bass, or did you start on piano first? What was your first instrument?
Well, my first instrument was piano. My father's was a pianist and a music educator. So he was my first teacher at age 7. And then I had another private teacher for piano for a few years. I took up the cello at age 11. I played it for a few years. And then at age 16, I took up the bass. Yeah.
Did you keep up the cello at all? For whatever reason, it seems like there are quite a few people who cello and bass, especially in the jazz world. I'm thinking of Larry Gray in Chicago. I know it seems like that's a common thing. Did you keep it up at all, or have you kept up any cello playing? Or
no, I wasn't. I mean, I guess I could have. My son's a beautiful cellist. He stayed with the cello. And I didn't try to migrate him over to the double bass, but I was at university, and I was taking cello as a minor in the music program there. But I realized that I really didn't have that much affinity for it, and the fingering thing was messing me up. And rather than find tune the cello in fourths, which probably would have been smart. I think Percy Eve did that. I decided to just stop playing the cello and focus on the double bass.
So around 16 was when bass came into the picture?
Yeah. The high school orchestra teacher was losing his bass players to graduation. So you need a bass player in this section, you know. And it was great for me because there was no competition at all at the high school level. You know, it's probably one or two bass players there in the section. And but the private teacher I had, his name was Ed Garcia, and he was also a student of the professor at the university there in Denton, Texas. By then, my parents had moved to Texas, and so I went to high school and college right there in Denton, Texas, and came up through the classical program there through the professor, Ed Rainbow. So that's my early beginnings. And the Fort Worth, I played in the Fort Worth Youth Orchestra for 3 years of high school. And that was wonderful. And then the same conductor who was conducting that orchestra was conducting the Fort Worth Symphony as well. So I just kind of transitioned out of high school into the big league, so to speak.
Well, you had quite the jazz school there in your backyard.
Yeah, it was an amazing opportunity for me. You know, you never know what degree fate has in your life, but when I look back, it's I had many blessings in that regard.
One of the benefits to going to Carnegie Mellon University is taking advantage of all the benefits of the city of Pittsburgh. Here is CMU bass faculty member Micah Howard on just all the things that Pittsburgh offers.
I think there's been a lot of success out of the studio, and I love teaching there. And you know that I love Pittsburgh, and I love our section, and I love the bass community here. So I think it's a great place to study the bass, not just because of CMU, but also just because of the city itself.
It's a great city and a great school. Studying with Micah and Peter Guild at CMU is an awesome choice. You can learn more and sign up for a free trial lesson at micahbhoward.com/Heath. And thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. This episode is brought to you by Ear Trumpet Labs. These are hand-built microphones out of Portland, Oregon, and they make an excellent mic for upright bass called Nadine. Barry Green got to try this mic at our 2020 online bass summit where Ear Trumpet Labs was a sponsor, and he was singing its praises all weekend long. It's an instrument-mounted condenser mic with an incredibly clear, natural sound and great feedback rejection. It's durable and works with in-ears, monitors, you name it. Not to mention, Christian McBride, Barry Bales, and Missy Raines are all Nadine users. Whether it's classical, jazz, Americana, or bluegrass, this mic seriously delivers, and they're offering a free t-shirt, especially to Contrabass Conversations listeners with a purchase of a mic. Just visit www.eartrumpetlabs.com/contrabass to claim yours and check out Nadine. How is it that Upton Bass came to design a bass for Gary Karr? Well, it all started with an email. Here's Eric and Gary from Upton Bass on how this happened.
Gary was at kind of the forefront of ergonomics in commissioning different bass makers to make ergonomic models to his playing style. And he basically replied. And he said, yeah, but, you know, here's what I'm looking for. I want something, you know, that's this, and this.
He sent us sketches.
Oh, and by the way, I want it affordable that anyone going to my car camp could afford it.
This model has become so popular, and Gary Karr even played it for the 50th anniversary International Society of Bassists convention. He was the opening, he gave the keynote speech, and he played two beautiful selections on his Upton bass, his Karr Model Upton bass. Learn more at uptonbass.com, and thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. Well, I almost moved to Denton, Texas multiple times. My bass teacher at Northwestern at the time went off my freshman year to teach at UNT and almost went there for undergrad, almost went there for grad, and Chicago just sort of kept me there for whatever reason. But yeah, and 1 O'Clock Band, that was kind of your path. Did you think, so I'm assuming jazz came into the picture for you in high school. Did you think that, what did you think you were going to be doing at age 16, 17?
I didn't really have any idea yet that I could make a living as a bass player. But it wasn't until I think I was a senior in high school that I realized that, you know, it's something maybe I could do. I was advancing, you know, well through the various programs and state competitions and things, and I was enjoying the jazz aspect of the bass, that I could participate in a wide variety of music, you know. So the jazz thing I was in my ears already. My dad had a really nice jazz collection, and I listened to a lot of records, mostly jazz pianists, because he loved the piano players. like Bill Evans and Oscar Peterson, Dave Brubeck, and various others, Nat King Cole. So I had a background already listening to jazz. Playing it was kind of on the side. There was the big band experience, the stage band in high school, and that was important, but it was more focused on perfecting 3 or 4 arrangements throughout a whole year. You know what I mean? You work on it and work on it. So it was a little tedious in that regard. And it wasn't a lot of improvisation, actually. It was mostly read. It's like almost classical in that sense. You just read your part and play it as well as you can. And you meet after school. It was always done in, after hours. It was never part of the normal curriculum. So, and jazz continued for that. When I went to university, I thought I was going to enter the lab band program there, but it was frustrating because I wasn't really good enough to be in a very good band. And the time of day that it met, that they assigned me to a band, they had bands that went all day long, 12 hours a day, So that many bands, that many kids from all over the country coming to study there. But I really wasn't enamored of the big band program at that point. I didn't have enough chops, enough experience. So I didn't participate in the lab band program for the first 2 years of university. I stayed really in the classical arena. And then I gradually was playing jam sessions and stuff after off campus with cats. And that was a real important development. Those are fun years because you're growing a lot, you're experimenting, you're discovering a lot of things, and it's a really fertile and beautiful period, of growth. But those years are far behind me now.
The whole institutional jazz thing is fascinating. I love going. I do clinics in high schools and that sort of thing. It always kind of freaks me out to walk in somewhere at 7 a.m. and hear jazz. It's like the least jazzy time of day, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That is funny, but yeah. Well,
what are you going to do? But so was there? It sounds like there was a decent amount of overlap the classical and jazz. It wasn't really siloed off at your time. I don't think it is now at UNT either. I know that Jeff Braditich and Lynn Seton have a good relationship, and it seems like there's a lot of crossover. But there was you could kind of do both when you were going to school then.
Oh, sure. There was time if you could, juggle your schedule to make all your various performance hours that like orchestra practice was, I don't remember if it was every day or if it was 3 days a week, 2 hours for each time was a rehearsal, 2 hours segments. But depending on what hour of the day your big band program was, and then I also participated in the small group things by then. Rich Madison was the instructor then, and we had improv classes and things where I would, play umpteen million choruses of Donna Lee behind, how many sax players lined up there, But that's part of it, and that's you develop and you learn a lot in those years, and you develop a lot of endurance. So that was also part of the experience. One of the people that was there when I was there was Lyle Mays, and Lyle was writing arrangements for the big band, for the 1 o'clock band, that were really adventurous, really imaginative. And he was such a skilled pianist himself, but I learned a lot playing with him on and off campus in those years, from like 74 to 76, those 2 years. We worked 6 nights a week in Fort Worth with John Racina. Had a gig, he was a sax player and a singer, and we backed him up for 6 nights a week. I learned a lot during those years. I didn't know a lot of tunes yet, so I was still learning tunes, and it was great. And the camaraderie was great, social aspect of it all. and making money. So it was all good in those years. Lyle was really important, though. He was writing stuff for the big band. It was, I wouldn't say it was classical, but he notated a lot of the bass parts. So, I was reading the parts when it was necessary, not improvising a whole lot, but unless it was a blowing section or something where we were backing up a soloist. But all the arranging stuff, he notated all the parts, and some of them were pretty involved. So it was a stretch there too for me, and it was great. And we continued playing together after college, and he'd hire me for this, that, or the other, and we get together and for a week or two at a time and developed some repertoire and recorded, and was really a wonderful relationship musically with Lyle, and always was a challenge and interesting,
Yeah. Must have been a lot of, it's always interesting to see, especially a place like UNT, the folks that were there during your time and where they went. You don't necessarily know the guy or gal next to you in band, where, 20 years later, what they end up doing. But like having Lyle there, that sounds pretty cool.
Lyle was beautiful, and some other musicians that were there, all the band, when you get to that level, even in the university level, when you get to that band, they're all amazing sight readers, and they really know their horns, and some of them are multi-instrumentalists. So Lyle took advantage of that too. So the reed section was like, you'd have a bassoon, and you have, it was wild, and clarinets and flutes, and he English horn. He had a lot of opportunity to explore all the various colors that those guys could create. So that was a lot of fun those years. And I don't know what else to say about that, except that it was a really fertile training ground. And some of those guys did go off and have great careers. The lead alto player, now I'm having a senior moment. So don't ask me those guys' names.
Don't worry. We won't have to go too deep on that. One thing, this is a totally random question, but I've thought a lot about, like, I was at Northwestern 6 years, and who went on and did things. I mean, we all went on and did things, hopefully, but who went on and had a big career in this and who didn't? And I've often wondered, like, can I trace any commonalities in the way they worked or the way they just were? And the one thing and again, this question may go nowhere, Mark, but I thought it'd be interesting. So the one thing that I noticed about people I followed that then maybe they were a principal player in a symphony or they went on, had some sort of career of prominence, is like soaking in live music. It's like the people that stayed in the practice room all weekend. I never really heard about those people. The people that were going and seeing the Chicago Symphony or going to the Jazz Showcase in Chicago, it seems more often than not that those people went on. Have you noticed anything like that, or did you ever kind of reflect back on that? Because out at UNT at a certain point, everybody you were working with is you got quite the resume there. But kind of those early years, have you ever thought about that or considered that?
Not too. I didn't keep track of the guys after we got out of school, so I mean, some of them I was on the road with already, like with when I went out with Woody Herman. A couple of those guys in the rhythm section I knew from North Texas. Pat Coyle was on piano, and so that kind of thing happened. But I know there was, the training ground there at North Texas and other great schools is wonderful, and a lot of those guys they go into education, but some of them go into the studio, so you wouldn't really see them on the road, but you might hear them on a TV recording or a movie soundtrack that you're not aware that they're there, but they are. And so that's a wonderful thing. In North Texas, Indiana, Miami, Berkeley, I mean, you can think of so many great schools for jazz out in Southern California now at USC and all these great programs. So, and they go into there's all these aspects and spokes in the music industry, from from writing and arranging to performance, and your instrumentalists, and everything in between. It's just the internet has changed things a lot for musicians, especially for creative artists. We don't have that support of the record industry that we used to have. So primarily people in the doing creative music are either doing it on the side, or if they're making a living, they're going on the road.
I am so proud to have my course with Discover Double Bass, Beginner's Classical Bass, out in the world. This was a long time coming, friends, and this course is designed, as the name implies, for beginner bassists who want to learn how to play classical music, or for more experienced players who wish to revisit the foundations of technique. The course is comprised of 66 lessons over 4 hours and covers a wide range of topics on classical bass, which will make a real difference to you playing. It is the perfect course for beginners. I feel weird saying that since it's my course, but I definitely believe in it, to build a solid foundation of double bass technique and to help you feel confident playing. Many of the lessons include transcriptions of the pieces, exercises, and etudes, so you have everything you need to practice at home. I spent hundreds of hours putting this together over the last few years. I'm so glad to see it out in the world. We have a link to it in the show notes, or just visit discoverdouble-bass.com/Jason Heath.
Hey there. My name is Dr. Garrett Hope. I am a composer, coach, podcaster, and speaker. I've been focused on building my music business since 2014 and helping others build theirs since 2015. I want to tell you about the second annual Ultimate Music Business Summit we are organizing. It'll take place early January of 2022. There will be dozens of presentations with highly actionable content, all of it available to you so you can start your business, grow your business, and ultimately make more money. Because here's the deal. Unless you earn all of your income from an employer, you are a self-employed small business owner. And if you want to do more than survive, if you want to grow your audience, or if you want to impact more people, you have to think and act like a business owner. And that means this summit is for you. This summit will give you real-world, not theoretical, strategies you can implement immediately. You don't need to be stuck with fear or living in your failures. I promise you, with all the teachers lined up, you will get something you've never thought of before. Even though building a business is hard, no one is promising it's easy. It is possible. You just need the right tools and strategies. Tickets for this virtual event will go on sale soon. To be the first in line and to get more information about the summit, presenters, and more, go to musicsummit.biz. That's musicsummit.biz, and add your email to the list.
It's been interesting watching how some people are trying to diversify. As folks, the bassist that comes to mind is Miles Mosley, who's based down in Los Angeles, and he's gotten really into making sure that his name is on his. Is it called the West Coast Get Down, the West Coast Collect? I'm blanking. I interviewed him like 5 years ago, but it was just interesting to see how they were trying to make sure that they each branded projects under their own name. So they would have some product, it wasn't so that you wouldn't get lost in the world of the side man or side person, and it was a really interesting conversation. He was very deliberate about, and also writing for commercial projects like video games and stuff like that, in addition to his own. Because his own, what he does, it's like Jimi Hendrix and meets the bass meets jazz. It's probably not the world's largest market for what he specifically does, but it's been interesting to see how folks are diversifying as this internet Goliath has apparently with us. Yeah.
Well, that is interesting. I think I'm still in a kind of an older school approach to things. It's like you get hired for a gig and you go and play it. But a lot of people are finding these creative ways of, like you said, marketing themselves. And I even back in the 80s, I took a look around at what was going on sideman wise and realized that if you wanted to increase your demand for your services, or even the amount of money that you could ask for, it was important to establish yourself as also, I wouldn't say maybe a leader, but as someone who is putting out products under their own name. Mm-hmm. So I started, the Bass Desires project was a brainchild of mine, but it was really kind of a cooperative band. Ultimately, everyone featured their songs. That was a decision, kind of an executive decision to do that and present that band in that way, which worked really well. Mm-hmm. And then associating with having that wonderful association with John Abercrombie throughout these few decades. And, you just sort of I didn't pick and choose my gigs that much, but I was fortunate to get asked to play by higher profile musicians. So we were always touring, we were on the road, we were making albums that were getting distributed. And, it was like that.
Well, it's so interesting to look at the bio, and it can all look so neat and orderly, like like UNT and then Woody Herman. Was playing with Bill Evans, was that the next step for you?
Yeah, it really was an important step, maybe the most important in terms of playing in small groups, and having that resume in the right resume, or that kind of association. I always wanted to play in piano trios. I was really enamored of the conception that Bill's trio, that he had, and that bass players and drummers had playing with Bill. That he allowed the bass player to step forward and be an integral part of the conversation in a melodic way and rhythmic way was really interesting. And for a creative bass player, it was really great. It was really interesting. So I knew I was gravitating towards piano trio. I didn't know that I'd actually get an opportunity to play with Bill, but one thing leads to another. You're out on the road with Woody Herman. We took a small Christmas break. When we came back on the road with the band, some of the cats had been in New York. And so they knew what was going on. And they said, "Hey, Mark, Bill Evans and they all knew I was a Bill Evans freak because I was on the road. That's all I listened to was Bill Evans. And in those days it was cassette tapes, and your headphones. So they said, Bill Evans looking for a new rhythm section. And my mentor back in Texas, Fred Crane, was a brilliant pianist and hired me to work in a hotel gig with him for some months. Put a call in for me. And it's, sometimes it is who you know and opens a door for you. You still have to, you still have to get in the batter's box and deliver. But at the same time, he did open a door for me. And through that association, I was able to get an audition with Bill. And, that was a great, great opportunity on many levels, that resonated so deeply and still does.
Well, talk about what seemed from an outside perspective like two pretty different gigs, going from the Woody Herman band into a piano trio with Bill Evans.
I'll tell you a funny story. So I'm on the road with Woody Herman, and I have to do this audition with Bill. And so we have a quick little break in our itinerary. So I flew up for the audition. Bill wanted to hear me more because he couldn't just hire me on the basis of that, and he had a few gigs coming up. So I was juggling being on the road with Woody Herman, sending a sub to my gig with Woody while I went to go play a few gigs with Bill. So I was going back and forth. And pretty soon Bill said, "Well, I'd like to hire you full time if that's okay." So then I gave notice to Woody, and he takes me aside. We were in a cafeteria somewhere, some school, and he takes me aside and he says, "Mark, I heard you want to go play with Bill Evans. Said, but it's just a trio." It's just a trio. You're never going to feel that power of the big band, It's just a trio.
That's hilarious because bigger always is better, right? Yeah.
Well, to his perspective, it was powerful. It was really powerful. And I understand where Woody was coming from. Finally, he had all the chairs in a band for that a few months that I was there were solid, man. The every horn player was incredible. It was really the band was gelling like crazy. It was just beautiful. And the rhythm section was killing. So he didn't want to lose, didn't want to break up the chemistry because it was grooving too hard. But life is what it is. So move on.
Well, it's funny how it's like you're playing the bass in both those things, but they're about as far. It's like playing a Mahler symphony and then going and playing in a string quartet or trio or something.
Yeah, it kind of is. Again, I think the classical world really trained me for playing different kinds of music and an approach to bringing the best support that I can in any situation. As bass players, we are supportive of what's going on in general, and that's what we're about. That's the fundamental position of the instrument. And so to me, it was just trying to make music at the highest level I could. And if in a big band it meant playing more inside the part and being there to support 20 guys, whereas in a trio, you have more lateral, can move more laterally in the time, and even in the harmony, you can do different things. So yeah, it's just finding the right, I guess it's just what's the word? Contracting and expanding.
Yeah.
And so it's like that. But the core of your musicianship is still there, and you bring that to bear on whatever the context is. Yeah.
Something you said in that interview with Pablo that resonated with me. You're talking about how improvising on bass, you're comparing it to playing a horn, or specifically playing a trumpet, and just how that, maybe that classical approach, Kusevitsky and Bottazzini and that sort of thing, informed your playing, and how that's different maybe from a saxophone player learning the chord scales and going through. And I thought that was interesting. You're talking about, like, particularly in thumb position, how maybe the bass is similar. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, it's kind of similar in a certain way. All the solo literature that prepared me for more virtuosic, quote unquote, kind of playing enabled me to play in the upper register of the instrument, where the tonalities are the register sort of gets over and through the harmony, almost like it's a higher voice, so it penetrates just a little bit better. It sings a little differently, more. It's just, you can hear those notes better. They pop out. And then the percussive aspect of playing the pizzicato, it reminds me a little bit of some kind of trumpet playing. I don't know what else to say. That kind of approach. Throughout my career, I wanted to bring more legato lines to the bass. So you'll hear me slurring notes and not attacking every note. So I do some hammer-ons, but it's not. I don't attack every note with my right hand. As I've gotten older, I got more into that, more slurring.
Yeah.
But horn-like lines, and in different kinds of intervals. I mean, certain intervals just lay on the bass intrinsically because of the way it's strung, in fourths. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of trapped in a certain way with this right. structure of the instrument. But on another end, I try to break out of it a little bit. Even conceptually, as a bass player, you're kind of in the bottom of the chord all the time. You're walking your lines and hitting the fundamental tones of the harmony. So suddenly you go to solo, and all you've been hearing and playing is the fundamental tones. I would say that accordingly, my solos are fairly diatonic. I really do stay in the kind of diatonic modes of the harmony. But as I've gotten older, I've gotten a little better at picking out some of the more color and tension notes that are higher up in the scale.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a trap that students frequently fall into, or people early. It's like their bass solos just kind of sound like sped up bass lines. You know, you're just so used to playing those ones and fives.
Yeah, it's what happens. If you can break out, I mean, part of it is just singing through the instrument. If you can, match your mental voice with what make your hands play what you're internally hearing, then you'll break out of those patterns. But we all fall into those patterns just as a result of wanting to reach a certain professional level every night. A certain professionalism kicks in, and you want to present. You don't want to. We all make mistakes while at times. It's how you recover from them while in the act of performance that gives integrity or continuity to your ideas. Mm-hmm.
I've always liked your arco playing, and it's no sort the classical background I'm sure helps with that. How much of your time when you're just spending time on the bass yourself, practicing, how much are you spending with the bow these days? Is the bow key for you on a daily basis, or is it kind of a once in a while thing? Or
it's just kind of, lately it's been once in a while. This move to Garden City has taken up a huge amount of our attention, and so I'm not into the bass as much as I would like to be. But when I do pick up the bow, it's usually just to get the strings vibrating, get the intonation. I'll play a few scales in different registers. I'll do a little target practice just to keep, the muscle memory going in shape. I don't, I stopped playing difficult literature a long time ago. And when I go to the bow, unless somebody has written something for me that I have to practice, normally I play kind of just long tones and somewhat long lyrical lines, like on the record I did this solo bass project. That Samurai tune was probably the most I've articulated different bowings, and tried to play a real structured melody in a while on a recording. The other piece, it's called Yin and Yang. That was improvised. The whole melody was improvised over the pizzicato part that I laid down first, and then I overdubbed the arco part after. That was an improvised line. It just kind of emerged, and that's the kind of solo. That's the kind of approach with the bow that I've been doing on live with Eliane. Occasionally we'll get into a tango moment where I'll play a little more, movement, but it's still pretty legato, and it's not real articulated eighth notes or anything like that. I mean, detaché bowings or whatever. It's very long bows, long tones, and slurred things.
Well, it's kind of especially when you're playing the bass predominantly pizzicato, it's kind of nice to have that ability to have these endless lines, kind of come out and not have to think about, regenerating the sound as it dies off with the pits.
Yeah, I like that contrast texturally, and just be able to, like you said, sustain a long tone and let it arc over the harmony. So, so more vocal, it's like a vocal representation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I love the album. I'll make sure to link up to it and send folks to it. But congratulations on moving out of Manhattan, getting hopefully a little more space. Do you have any tour plans or any travel plans coming up? I know it's kind of a weird time for that, but
well, in fact, we're going to be in the Bay Area in November.
Oh, excellent.
We'll be at Yoshi's for a couple nights in mid-November.
Oh, cool. I'll look you up on the calendar. I'd love to come check out a show live. That'd be great. That's one of our great venues.
It really is, and we enjoy playing there, and we're so eager to get back to live performance. It's been almost 2 years now, this hiatus for us.
Wow. So have you played live since March 2020? Wow. Yeah.
No, we played the last date we had was November. Well, we just did one in New York at City Winery last week. But that's the first date we've had since November 30th of 2019.
So what was it like getting back on stage after? Is that? I'm guessing that's probably the longest break you've had in your career.
Yeah, that's exactly true. It was great to get back on stage and just to get back in the rehearsal room and remember the material. It was kind of weird though, because you pick up right where we left off, and it felt like, getting up on a bicycle in a way. You just don't quite forget how to ride. You might be a little rusty, but it was great. And it just created this sensation that we've been in this weird time bubble because all these things happened in our lives. We transitioned out, pivoted out of New York to another place. And so did our daughter and her husband. And we have this new kind of experience, living experience. But at the same time, it just kind of mushroomed out of the space out of this void. And suddenly the zipper closed and we're back in where we were, It's really weird, but great at the same time. But I don't have much memory of the last year and a half, except because it's very weird.
Right. I've gotten sick of staring at this wall for the last year and a half, but it's nice to know you can get back on that bike, and it's great. Well, cool. I'll check out the show when you come through Yoshi's. Good to hear that you're back on the road and back at it, and congrats on the album. Marc, I love the album. Folks, check it out anywhere you get music. Spotify, Apple Music, just go to ECM and look it up directly, or wherever you listen to music. What fun. Thank you, Marc, for chatting. Thank you for listening. I have such a good time doing these podcasts. I have been doing this crazy podcast for so long. I kind of forget about it. I have so many other projects in my life, but this, I think, is my longest job. Well, that I currently have right now, if we can call this a job. I guess we can sort of. I think I was still in the Elgin Symphony longer than I've been doing this podcast, but that will quickly be eclipsed here, or in the next couple of years at least. So yeah, wow. Never thought I'd be doing it for as long as I have, but it's a great excuse to chat with people like Marc, and who wouldn't want to chat with Marc, and all the other guests we've had on this podcast. I can't believe we're well into the 800s at this point. Thank you, whether you are brand new to the podcast or you've been around for 800 and whatever episodes this is. Thank you so much for listening. We do many other things besides the podcast these days. If you're not on our email newsletter, join us and thousands of other bass players there. We put out a couple emails a week about the community, about new pieces that we're putting out through our sheet music store, new finds and discoveries. So it'd be great to see you there. And YouTube, I will try not to do too many shout outs here, that for the last year or so, year and a half, I guess, maybe, I've been putting out a video a week. Pretty much, I think. And those have been doing well and have been a lot of fun. I just put out a review of Samandal, which I've been wanting to do, but sort of dreading doing because I thought I'd get blowback. And so far I haven't. So I'd love to see you there. If you ever want to reach out to me, feedback at Contrabass Conversations will put you in touch with me. Thank you so much to the team that puts these podcasts together. We've got Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Mitch Mooring, and Trevor Jones. Mitch makes beautiful basses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You can learn more about these award-winning basses at mitchmooring.com. We've got some interns on board this fall that we're working with in various capacities. More on that. Very exciting and a lot of fun for us, hopefully for them too. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.